Hello and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Some 50 to 100 years ago, the lack of water supply plunged urban and rural life into disarray. Long queues for just a few buckets of water twice a week forced the government to come up with plans to build reservoirs in the countryside. Villages had to make way for bulldozers, and many residents found their homes eventually submerged in the reservoir. Historians are now exploring these underwater ruins and their significance to Hong Kong's past. To most people, this is simply a reservoir that supplies their drinking water. But to others, it's the site of their hometown. Submerged for 50 years, everything in the village was buried, along with the villagers' memories.
好似佢哋啲童年冰封咗喺嗰度咁樣，細個啊往昔嗰啲生活就冰封咗喺嗰度嘅。陸上嘅話可能已經拆晒，反而喺個湖度咧可能仲會保留到一磚半瓦咯。
The whole village, ancestral tombs, temples, everything were all relocated. Time passes, but one thing doesn't change: the villagers' memories of their hometown. Every spring and autumn, the former Man Yi Wan village chief, Kenneth Lee, leads descendants of the Lee family to worship their ancestors. Looking down from the hilltop, the village where they used to live is now totally underwater.
即係改變咗啦，做咗食水嘛，以前係海嚟㗎嘛，即係有啲感觸嘅。
In the 1960s, as the population grew, Hong Kong's freshwater resources became scarce. At its worst, tap water was only available once every 4 days for 4 hours at a time. To solve the shortage problem, the government started constructing the High Island Reservoir in 1971, plunging the Man Yi and Sha Tsui villages in Sai Kung below water level and turning them into underwater villages. Although the homes were intentionally flooded nearly 50 years ago, Kenneth still remembers how some 300 people were living in the villages, like the Lees, Chows, Mans, and Chan clans, all living peacefully in the countryside.
都好開心㗎，即係住慣咗呢度，冇水食唔得㗎嘛，係嘛？都改變都冇辦法㗎啦，係嘛？
上學啊，呢度考，呢度有個豬欄仔。
Although Hua has been away from the village for many years, he and his fellow villagers, Ming and Uncle Chow, still can't forget their home. They recall the layout of the village on paper, based on memory and a few old photos.
橙色就係我哋嘅廚堂，利是中廚。呢個另外一個私廚就係我哋嘅另外一房人個家祠嚟嘅，係啊，一個家祠呢度。 There
are ancient underwater structures all over the world. For example, with the construction of Sinan-Jiang River Reservoir in Zhejiang Province in 1959, the ancient city of Chunan, with more than 1,000 years of history, was submerged. The resulting unique landscape and now famous tourist spot is called Qiandao Lake. Hong Kong Underwater Archaeological Association chairman Jackie Wu was diving with some mainland friends when he accidentally discovered an ancient bridge belonging to the old city. This made him wonder if there were underwater villages in Hong Kong as well.
我諗好多香港人都唔知有條水底古村喺呢個萬宜水庫下邊嘅。哇！原來我哋香港都有水下古村喎，唔止係千島湖啊，或者其他國家有水底古城。
Jackie was touched by the villagers' nostalgia for their past. After receiving approval from the Water Supplies Department, he decided to dive into the High Island Reservoir and conduct underwater video recordings he hoped would soothe the villagers' homesickness.
咁啊，其中一位村民仲話：我琴晚發夢都仲夢見以前間學校，咁我盡力希望同佢影到間學校啦。咁呢個會盡我全力。呢個對正呢個石頭，落嚟就係祠堂。個側邊嗰度一撚屋都係。
Before diving, 82-year-old Uncle Chow volunteered to take Jackie to the place to survey the terrain. He says he often goes hiking in the country park near the reservoir because he feels like he's close to his old hometown.
3、4個月啊，入嚟欣賞下咁咯，開心下嚟到欣賞下咯，第一故鄉。第日老咗行唔得，見唔到啊。
The High Island Reservoir is deep and wide, about the size of 35 Victoria parks. Apart from the difficulty of accurately locating the old site of the village, it is also tough to find a suitable place to take a dive into the water.
你睇見呢啲路都非常之崎嶇，咁同埋咧萬屋就喺嗰棵樹喺水度突出嚟嗰個位，咁我哋要搬晒啲嘢咧行去嗰個位喺嗰度落水，啊，所以呢度咧唔係一個理想嘅地方嚟嘅。
Looking around, they finally decided to start at this spot.
佢有啲山啊、嗰啲形啊、嗰啲石頭，佢認得哦。呢度對下就係我哋條村，嗰度就係祠堂，咁對我哋嘅潛水係好大幫助嘅。呢條路線咧比較理想，就冇咁多岩石喺度，可能會整穿嘅橡皮艇。揾到嘅機會好大。
我哋懷緬下，我希望啊，呢個成功。
哦，希望，好成功。
There are 10 reservoirs in Hong Kong, providing a stable supply of clean drinking water. However, the construction of these reservoirs forced some local villages underwater. This includes villages in at least 7 reservoirs, such as High Island, Plover Cove, Tai Tam Tuk, and Shing Mun. As time has passed, these historical imprints have slowly faded.
曾經有條村呢條村咧就淹沒咗，咁咧就以前咧就原來有人喺度生活過，咁其實佢哋都有啲犧牲咗嘅喎，係咪？我都覺得好值得為佢哋留翻一啲嘅記錄喺度啦。
Pu Sun-hwa is an adjunct professor at the University of Hong Kong's Department of Real Estate and Construction. He said Tai Tam Tuk village was the first village flooded due to the construction of a reservoir. The village has a history of more than 100 years, but not many people know of its existence.
喺嗰啲文獻咧就記載到咧就係1841年其實咧就已經有人喺度住㗎啦。咁直至到佢哋搬村嗰陣時候咧，就係應該係1914年嗰陣時候啦。咁都係20間屋度，咁就70幾人。佢哋係客家人嚟嘅，佢哋其實都生活得好艱苦嘅。佢哋務農啦，種米啦。
The professor could not find any photos of Tai Tam Tuk village, just a painting from almost 170 years ago. To find out more about the village, Poon agreed to work with divers in 2014 and 2018, hoping they could dive to the bottom of Tai Tam Tuk Reservoir and explore what remains of this lost ancient village.
揾到一啲基建嘅遺跡啦，譬如有護土牆啦，有啲嘅石柱啦。同埋咧有一個應該係一個橋墩嘅裏邊一嚿嘅木頭，揾到呢啲嘅咁樣嘅遺跡，咁即係其實可以係間接地證明即係呢個大潭篤村佢嘅存在咯。喺呢個位置咧係應該可以望到大潭篤水塘下邊嗰個大潭篤村，不過而家就俾水即係已經淹沒咗啦。
Poon now goes for walks near the Tai Tam Tuk Reservoir from time to time, hoping to find clues about the ancient villages.
因為呢條村咧係已經淹沒咗超過100年啦，咁啲村民咧就最初係搬咗去柴灣，然後再跟住就再搬去筲箕灣咁樣嘅。咁揾翻佢哋嘅呢班嘅村民梗係冇可能啦， 咁但係佢哋嘅後代咧，我哋都係嘗試去揾佢哋嘅。咁啊，最大嘅群族係姓鍾㗎咯。但係我哋都經過咁多年咧，都係冇乜頭緒。
Many villagers had to give up their homes so that everyone in Hong Kong could have fresh drinking water. Poon says their history should be remembered.
嗱，以前譬如興建水塘，當然係有一啲記錄啦，但係似乎咧好少講及到咧就係人物嗰個嘅參與啦。因為興建譬如水塘，以至佢哋可能要搬村，真係要離開佢哋嗰個家園。要去到另外一個地方咧，嚟到去開始生活，咁所以我覺得好值得咧記錄翻呢啲嘅歷史。當我哋睇到咁靚嘅水塘、咁清潔嘅水飲用嗰陣時候，我哋都會想嘅原來咧，即係有好多人係付出過，好多人參與過嘅。
When we come back, we dive deep into the reservoir and into the past of Hong Kong rural life. Stay with us. Welcome back. Long buried in the reservoirs of Hong Kong are rural villages where people once lived. When divers decided to look for and record their search for these villages, old residents were excited to see their lost homes once again. We follow the adventures of the divers as they explore the ruins of Hong Kong's past.
56年咯，好似1966啊，睇下仲有冇啲屋劇啊，應該可能有條屋劇喺度咯。
65-year-old Can Lee is the head of Chun Pui village in Tai Po. He and his two friends, Sang and Ming, have lived on either side of Plover Bay since childhood. The construction of the reservoir meant their old villages were flooded and submerged, just like the Man Yi Wan village in Sai Kung.
啲民婦嗰啲人係好中意游水啊！有一日嚟到我哋嗰個碼頭，游到水中央嗰度咧，啊，覺得好靚呢個地方，因為呢度咧全部都係山嚟嘅，圍住嘅，就係一個好似一個湖咁樣嘅。如果將呢個地方，如果喺個淡水嘅，咪夠晒香港人用咯。
To resettle the villagers affected by the construction of Plover Cove Reservoir, the government relocated them to a new village in Tai Po. Built in 968, Plover Cove Reservoir was the world's first reservoir built in the sea. It can hold 230 million cubic meters of water. Every year during the dry season, people can see the exposed ruins of the villages.
可能呢啲係古種嚟㗎。
係啊，
茶壺啊，以前斟茶嗰啲咧，啲壺啊有嘴。
我哋呢條昌村咧就應該係魚龍混合嘅。村民咧啲前輩咧，即係通常對趁墟咩都通過呢個水道去㗎嘛。咁啊，男性咧多數都係出海攞魚，女性就喺屋企耕田。
我哋條村嗰陣時好靚啊，個環境都熱鬧，尤其是過年。過年個個貼揮春啊，個個叔伯兄弟一齊燒炮仗啊，揾唔翻以前我哋童年嗰啲生活㗎啦，只有靠我哋啲回憶嘅啫。而家執翻呢啲。
After building the Plover Cove Reservoir, the government built the High Island Reservoir in 1971 and relocated those villagers to downtown Sai Kung. Kenneth Lee from Mani Village in Sai Kung often visits his friends in Tai Po because they share similar experiences. Kenneth, Ming, and Sang are brothers of the same clan. They were all forced to leave their hometowns because of the construction. Wah says he understands their feelings. It's been half a century since the relocation, but the days of the move are still fresh in their memories.
等到搬村嗰日咧，好沉重，即係好似真係想喊，乜嘢物件都執晒出嚟啦，叫做已經係準備，即係準備要擔緊走咁樣啦，即係鑊啊、煲啊、啲櫃籠啊，所以覺得好似好空虛咁啦。連埋嗰啲貓貓狗狗啊，都零舍有個感覺，成日喺我哋個腳捐嚟捐去，又貓貓聲咁樣喺度，猛喺度咪喵喵咪喵喵，唔知好似，總之佢哋都知道嘅，好似。
Sang said the government initially demolished all the houses before building the reservoir, but they later changed this practice and kept all the buildings in the village when they built the High Island Reservoir. When he found out divers would visit their village in High Island Reservoir, Sang said he felt a sense of gratitude.
你一搬出嚟又推冧咗咯。我哋嗰條村啊，2棵大榕樹啊，幾百年嘅，都俾佢斬埋。好羨慕嗰啲要去得嘅潛水，不過我哋就潛唔到啦。你啊潛水啊，
有咩睇到？有咩發現？
有咩睇到啊？
我影翻俾你哋睇啦。
阿師傅，你影多啲啊，影多啲嘛。知道。
After obtaining approval from the Water Supplies Department, the villagers and divers explored the terrain for several days and finally decided on a starting point. The temperature that day was 17 degrees when the group of old villagers and divers arrived at the High Island Reservoir.
最大嘅困難就係個寒冷啊，因為體溫流失得多嘅話咧，都會造成有一定嘅身體風險。希望可以唔使落咁深就揾到阿叔叔嗰啲根啦。
我問咗周屋個伯伯，佢話竹林有個石砌嘅圍牆，下邊咧再落就係周屋有排屋嘅。咁而家起碼嗰度我知道個位置咧，咁我哋而家會先同阿 Eddie 先去周屋。
Diver Jackie Wu and his partner Eddie know the villagers have high expectations and want to see their homes again, so they're prepared to do everything they can to satisfy them.
再想下睇唔睇揾到我鄉下嗰間祖屋啊，俾我哋睇下。
同埋廚堂啦，我哋嗰個祖先嘅地方。
希望啲潛水員幫我揾翻失咗嗰啲學校啊。
With heavy equipment and the villagers' ardent expectations, the divers set off to the bottom of the reservoir. But it isn't a smooth start.
我喺30幾米咧，即係個呼吸器咧，突然間咧就飲落去啖水，好彩我有2支樽就揦住另外1支樽嚟呼吸。咁同埋咧就啲攝錄機啊嗰啲咧都出咗問題。
After 45 minutes at a depth of 34 meters, they found the Old Manyi village. Covered in sand and sludge, and despite the erosion of time, they could see signs of the old bamboo forests, stone pillars and enclosures, proof of the rural life that once existed there. It's been nearly 50 years since they left their village. The group took a rubber boat out as they eagerly awaited the divers.
呢個都喺我哋村入邊啦，我哋呢度田嚟㗎啦，田嚟㗎，
係咪呢個位差唔多啦？係啦，差唔多啊。
如果唔係你哋班潛水人員帶我哋啫，我哋就冇咩機會呢度身歷其境嗰啲地方，好似親身到咗自己鄉下咁。不過變咗水面咧就唔似啫，個感覺就喺自己鄉下度，滄海桑田。
There is no trace of the village above the calm surface of the water. They wait with hope that the divers find something below.
有冇睇到嘢啊，師傅？
大約喺30米深左右啦。都摸到一啲好大嚿、一嚿好橫嘅石。
佢話有間石屋好平滑嘅，即係我哋以為就係
一間柴房啊嗰啲咁類啲嘢咧，咁啊睇佢嘅位置咧，就覺得係一個我哋李氏家祠一間廚堂咯。但經過50年，已經俾水浸咗啦，已經沒咗咁耐，仲有啲痕跡，都算都係另外啲味道咯。
見到啲老村民80幾歲咁企晒喺岸邊等我咧，睇到佢哋嘅眼神咧，哇！好開心咁歡迎我翻嚟咧，咁其實令到我好感動。咁喺我人生裏邊咧，咁我覺得咧做咁多水下考古咧，今次係最有意義。
竹林啊，係。
The Old Mani village residents have been wanting to see their hometown again, so today they all came to enjoy the underwater footage. The children are curious about it.
因為我覺得有少少奇怪咯，條村都俾人浸㗎。
Kenneth and Ming are relieved to see that the new generations still care about their history. Although most of the village is buried in mud, the villagers can recognize the ancestral hall and pig pen. Ming hopes that these images will be remembered by future generations.
希望佢喚醒咗我哋嘅子孫咧，記得仲有條村咧，佢睇到明白咧就有印象啦，唔明白咧我再解釋佢嘢。
The villagers who left their homes hope the next generation remember their sacrifice.
好多唔知道政府做咁大個水塘啊，浸咗咁多屋喺下邊啊，好多人都唔知，都唔明白。後生嗰啲，老嗰啲有啲就走咗咯啊！
俾全香港人睇下水底啲故鄉。
That's Pearl Magazine this week. See you again next week. Good night.